choke.
He's got it. It's under the neck.
There it is.
No, it's on the chin.
There's the tap. Still undisputed. Khabib Nurmagomedov has finished Conor McGregor tonight.
Look at him. Look at him screaming at the corner. He's screaming at Dylan Dennis, Conor McGregor's jiu-jitsu coach. Look at him. Oh,
And now Khabib jumps the fence.
No.
Whoa! No! And he's going right at Dylan Dennis. Mayhem! Oh, no. Total chaos here. It looks like UFC security has corralled Khabib Nurmagomedov. Well, Khabib wasn't kidding when he said no handshake after the fight. Oh! And now one of Nurmagomedov's teammates throws a right hand and Conor. All hell has broken loose.
This is crazy.
Well, this is
not something we're going to like, nothing we're going to condone. It's not something we want to promote. This is not professionalism, but it is the fight game to an extent.
This is horrible.
It can get nasty.
This is the nastiest I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is not how you want it to be in this sport. This is not how we want to represent ourselves.
Jumping out of the octagon like that and attacking someone in the crowd.
And I
mean, that is so stupid and so unnecessary and so foolish. After such a spectacular victory.
And one of Khabib's teammates, I believe, Zubair Tuhugov, landed a right-hand flush on Conor McGregor in there. This is going to stain an incredible performance for Khabib Nurmagomedov.
So the fallout continues. We have Marc Raimondi, MMAfighting.com on the line. Evening, Marc.
How's it going?
So when you were doing your fight prediction with us last week, how come you never predicted a mini riot at the end?
Could not have foreseen that, although maybe in hindsight, that could have been foreseen because of the bad blood that was involved.
Yeah, fairly dramatic stuff. Where were you when it all kicked off? I know you were at the event.
I was actually in the media center because they bring fighters back after the prelims and after some of the early undercard, main card fights for interviews. So I was back there. So I was actually just watching on television in a tent outside the T-Mobile Arena.
Okay. So between social media and various fan footage, we've been able to piece together fairly well what went on. It was pretty disgraceful scene, obviously, and Dana White made a fairly good fist, I think, of being upset at the whole thing. Where does UFC culpability come into this whole mess?
I think that they have some culpability. I think that this entire fight was based on, like I said, Bad Blood. That was the name of the special that aired on ESPN here in the States, Bad Blood. And the initial, I guess, the initial overture that went above and beyond what fight promotion usually is was when McGregor, of course, as we all know, in April, attacked a bus in the loading dock of Barclays Center in Brooklyn that Nurmagomedov was on. He threw the dolly through the bus window. We know that story. That's where this all started. At least that's where it really ignited. And the UFC used that incident in the fight promotion. They used it in promos. They played it over and over again to sell this fight. And it sold extremely well, as we know. But did it also cause others to think that there is no responsibility for their actions? Is it all just about promoting fights? I mean, this was not promoting a fight. This was a chaos after a fight. Yeah. But that is the question. How much does the UFC really have to kind of take it on themselves? You know, did they maybe go too far in promoting the fight the way that it was?
Yeah, here's some of what Dana White had to say on Saturday.
We have to see what happens with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. I mean, not just the commission. I mean, there's going to be fines. There's going to be God knows what, you know. Can these guys get visas and get back in the country? You know what I mean? And I mean Khabib. We'll see how this thing plays out. And, you know, like I was saying, been doing this for 18 years, and the biggest night ever, and I couldn't be more disappointed. You know me, I'm usually mad at everything, you know, but I'm not even mad. I'm just really disappointed.
Dana, you said that the bus incident was disgusting. The press conference was the darkest press conference ever. Today you're disappointed. Do you regret using the bus footage, which kind of incensed Conor? I mean, looking back to kind of how it ended up right now. Would you do the same again?
I would.
Okay.
It's part of the story.
Yep. Okay. Did you get a chance to talk to Conor after the whole incident, and kind of what's
I
his
did.
mind frame after the fight, and also
He didn't care.
afterwards?
He didn't care about the fight. Meaning the fight after. He was more concerned about the fight. Fight.
I mean, Dana's going into real cliche dad mode there. I'm not even angry, I'm just disappointed. And he said he used the bus footage because, look, it's part of the story. If they're having a rematch, I dare say they'll use the footage of what we saw on Saturday night. I mean, he's certainly, and his face, I mean, it was a very convincing effort at being disappointed and horrified by the whole thing, Dana White. But the cynics in us can almost see the mental calculations going on as he tries to tot up the sums for the rematch. I think the UFC is completely culpable here.
I think that you're absolutely right. I think that if there is a rematch, and I have a feeling there probably will be, this is certainly not over. I think that all that footage, the UFC has that brawl from every single angle because it took place in and around their octagon. I certainly believe that the promo videos will be filled with that as well, and we'll go from there. But you have to question where is the line? It is the fight game, and I guess there is some. When people talk about the fight game, they kind of give it a little bit more freedom because essentially these men do go into the cage and fight each other, and it's a brutal sport. But where is the line, and how do you protect the people around the cage? How do you protect the innocent people that were on that bus? There are other people involved, not just the principals at play.
Yeah. So just one other issue as well. So it seems like Tuhugov is one of the entourage, Khabib's entourage, who hopped into the ring and got involved with McGregor due to fight Artem Lobov. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It is like there was a scriptwriter here at the start of the year. I'm just throwing that out there. So there was talk that they're going to be banned for life, or they'll never fight in the UFC again. Dana White said that. Any more movement on that situation?
Not since Saturday night. I know Dana White said that anyone that jumped into the cage to attempt to attack Conor McGregor will not fight in the UFC, but that fight between Tuhugov and Lobov has not officially been canceled as far as I know.
Okay.
It's just Monday morning now in the States, so I imagine there will be some more news coming up this week. I'm sure we may hear something from the Nevada Athletic Commission possibly the next few days or in the next week or two. There's still a lot to unpack from Saturday night.
Yeah, and in some respects, as dramatic as the events were after the fight itself is still far more interesting and more worthy of talking about because it was a really interesting fight. I mean, at first glance, I'm sure you've looked back at it a few times at this stage, but at first glance, certainly it was Conor McGregor's worst nightmare come to life in every respect. Yeah,
and it's a shame that we're talking about the extracurricular activities and not the actual fight, which I thought was, a very good fight. I thought it was a great performance by Khabib Nurmagomedov. I also thought that McGregor had his opportunities, and I thought he did a good job, a better job than many people have in defending some of Khabib's takedowns, a better job of, he beat Khabib in one round, in the third round, which no one had even done before, so he won the one round. I thought he had chances in that round, the third. But overall, I thought it was a good fight, and if it would have just ended there, if it would have just ended with Khabib putting on, which it really wasn't a choke, it was a face crank or a neck crank. It wasn't really under the chin. It was more of a crank, which is kind of like an old school wrestling move. If it would have just ended there, I think that would have been that should have been the story, right? That should have been what everyone was talking about. But unfortunately, now what happened after the fight after the fight is what people are really harping on about. Yeah. Getting back to the fight, though, for a second. So, when McGregor was on the ground, particularly in rounds 1 and 2, he took a lot of punishment in the second round. You're saying he withstood some of that pressure reasonably well. I saw Chris Fields was on our morning show here talking about how he used the butterfly defence on the ground, which is quite taxing physically. McGregor did look a bit gassed as the fight went on. He's both trying to conserve energy on the ground and also withstand what's going on from Khabib. So talk to us a little bit about those exchanges on the ground. Right, exactly. You could see in the first round, it was Khabib didn't do a whole lot of offense from the top, but he had McGregor down, and McGregor was trying to conserve that energy, so he didn't use too much. You can't really explode out of those situations, especially that early in the fight, because this could be a 5-round fight, and it could be going deep in there, and he needs his gas tank for the whole duration. So I thought he did a good job conserving in the first round. The second round is when Khabib really poured it on with ground and pound, but to his credit, McGregor was able to kind of withstand that, and almost, he was covering up for a lot of those Khabib blows, and I think in his mind he was thinking, I'm hoping this guy gasses out now, but that was a very one-sided round for Khabib. And then it almost kind of played into McGregor's hands a bit in the third round, where I think Khabib was a bit tired. I think he was trying to conserve his energy, and the third round was spent almost entirely on the feet, and that's where McGregor had a good round, but he didn't land what could have been the knockout blow and didn't really do any major damage in that third round, which could have swung the fight. In the fourth round, it was just back to that wrestling game, and Khabib can do that for 20 rounds. I mean, he's just been doing that his entire life. And even on a lower gas tank, Khabib is still just an oppressive wrestler, oppressive pressure.
Yeah, and certainly one of the points we raised in our chat last week about the advantage that the grappler has is that, you know, McGregor at the start of the second was anticipating another takedown, and Khabib sort of drops down and then throws the right over the top, and it catches McGregor flush, and then he gets him down again in that round anyway. So that was really kind of a perfect exhibition of what McGregor was up against. But certainly on the commentary, I was watching Joe Rogan and his buddies in the third round. They had felt that maybe, just maybe, I mean, Rogan, in fairness, was still saying that he felt McGregor was absolutely gassed, but the others were maybe arguing that McGregor had withstood Khabib on the ground. Khabib had maybe punched himself out a little bit in the second, and McGregor now was coming into the fight and things were going okay. I must say, I never felt like that. It never felt like McGregor was in control at any stage, or that he had any choice in what happened in the first two rounds. But certainly in the third, Khabib did look a bit gassed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we've seen this before in McGregor fights. We saw it at UFC 189 against Chad Mendes, where Mendes was able to take him down and impose his will, but Mendes gassed out. McGregor was able to get back to his feet, and he finished it in short order. We've also seen McGregor gain a second wind in fights, like in the second Nate Diaz fight at UFC 202, where he lost the third round and came back to win the fourth in a very impressive performance. He gutted out the fourth, and that was actually what sealed the fight for him. So we've seen him come back from being tired before and get those second wins, and it happened in the third round, but it just didn't happen enough. He just didn't have enough to get that kill shot or get any kind of blow that did sustain damage to Khabib, and the fourth round was pretty much it.
And I wonder why that was, Marc. Because if you said to McGregor, you're going to get this third round, you're going to get this chance to land the killer punch, McGregor would have thought, okay, maybe I can live with that. Maybe if you'd offered him those first three rounds beforehand and say you're going to get through the first two, it will be no fun, but you'll get that third round. Did Khabib maybe surprise him in how he was able to go toe-to-toe?
I think it was a combination of McGregor. He was already a bit tired.
Yeah.
He was also, I mean, he constantly had the idea of the takedown in his head.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a question of him not being able to fully commit to those punches because he knows the shot is coming in. He knows the double leg or the clinch against the cage is coming. So maybe he was not able to kind of put full force into those punches. And also he's probably thinking, well, this is the third round. This could go 5, and he can't go all out in the third.
Mm.
There's a million different things that it could be, but that was kind of, if you want to pinpoint a place in the fight where, okay, this is where McGregor has that window, he has that opportunity, it was that third round.
And so do you come away with the sense that there are a few points of optimism for McGregor, that maybe ring rust was a factor and he'll be better in the next fight, and if there is a rematch, that there is an avenue for him to beat Khabib? Or do you come away, I must say, I think the majority of people come away with the sense, copper fastened, that Khabib has McGregor's number?
Well, I mean, I think that certainly Khabib will be a favorite in the rematch, if there is one, and there probably will be, and possibly a greater favorite than the last time. But it's interesting, we did a poll on our MMAfighting.com Instagram, and before the fight, I believe it was like 63% of people thought Khabib would win on Saturday. And we did a poll the next day about who would win the rematch, and it was almost the exact same percentage. 63% thought Khabib, and about 47% thought Conor McGregor. So I don't think a lot of people who watch the fight are. I think most people feel the same way, that Conor can come in and still land that big punch, because he does have that puncher's chance always. He always has that ability to land the big left hand, and that could finish the fight early, or it could just change the dynamic of the fight. But it just never came on Saturday. So certainly in the rematch, I think that Khabib would be, again, he'd be the favorite, and he would probably win. But you can't count out McGregor. And knowing what he knows now, he was able to make adjustments in the second Nate Diaz fight, and you would imagine he'd be able to make some adjustments here after having seen Khabib now, over the course of 4 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if McGregor is gearing up for a rematch, they'll spend a lot of time pretty much accepting of the fact that they will be on the ground. And so I wonder, is there much more he can do when he finds himself in those situations for what will probably be the guts of 2-3 rounds anyway again? Like, I mean, what more can he do?
There's not much. There's no doubt. I mean, even going to this fight, I think that he had to have known that he was going to end up on his back at some point. That's just, if you look at every single one of Khabib Nurmagomedov's fights in the UFC, he's taking guys down. It's almost impossible to stop. So the question is, when he does go down, how does he cope with that? And maybe he did take too much damage in that second round. He was getting beat up, certainly, from Khabib. It was a 10-8 round, so it was a dominant round for Nurmagomedov. That is the question, I guess. The question is, when he does get taken down, what does he do? How does he conserve that energy? And when he gets back to his feet, how does he make the most of those opportunities?
Yeah. Back to the wider picture, when Khabib did his press conference, I mean, he made the point to people, he was saying McGregor's thrown, attacked the bus, and he said all this about my religion and my state and my family, and, so he said, why are we still talking about me climbing the cage, even though it was only half an hour old at that stage? He was like, why are we still talking about this? Which was pretty funny, and he had his call from Putin. Dana White raised the possibility of a lengthy enough suspension for Khabib that he would be stripped of his title. Is that going to happen? And who ultimately is going to give him the suspension? Because Dana White's talking about, well, we've got to see what Nevada Athletic Commission decide to do. But ultimately, I mean, if they suspend him, then he just goes and fights in New York. If there is a sizable ban here to be meted out to Khabib, it will be from the UFC. So do we know how they're going to act? What's likely to happen?
That's actually not correct.
Right, okay.
I don't see the UFC taking any discipline against Khabib Nurmagomedov as far as the suspension goes. It would fall solely in the hands of the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
But if the UFC were serious about it, they couldn't they? There's nothing prohibiting them from banning Khabib.
They didn't suspend Conor McGregor for throwing the dolly through the bus, and I don't think that they're going to do. And that was an actual criminal act. He was arrested. He pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct. That was a criminal act, and he was not suspended at all. Yeah. So I have a hard time seeing the UFC taking any kind of suspension or ban against Khabib. I would be very, very surprised.
Which makes a mockery of Dana White not even being angry but being disappointed.
It's a fine line, because UFC fighters are independent contractors, and there's some weird rules here in the States about what you can really do as far as disciplining independent contractors.
Okay.
I think what could happen is, I do foresee Nurmagomedov getting some kind of suspension from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and that's already in the works. They're investigating this whole situation. And to your point, he actually would not be able to go fight in a different state, because in the U.S. and in Canada, if one athletic commission gives a suspension, everyone else honors it.
Okay.
So he would not be able to go anywhere else and fight. It would be honored throughout the States and in Canada. So I think that he will get suspended, and he will probably face a big fine. How long that suspension is, I don't know, and I guess that would determine whether or not the UFC takes the belt from Nurmagomedov. If it's 6 months, I doubt they strip the belt. But if it's any longer than that, 9, 12 months, which I don't believe he will get. I don't think he'll get that long. But you have to weigh it, because fighters only fight maybe every 4, 5, 6 months. So is a 6-month suspension really even that big of a deal for a fighter? Most fighters, some fighters take time off. McGregor didn't fight for 2 years in the UFC. So what really is a fair and a fair suspension that would actually get the job done as far as determined. Okay, very interesting. So we could very, very conceivably have a 5-6 month ban, and then 2 months of that is a build up to the rematch anyway. Exactly. I guess the last point, McGregor's stock then, I mean, clearly he's still the big box office draw, and whatever he does next will be an absolutely massive fight. There's a few tweets or texts in wondering about, is he damaged by tapping out? Didn't look to me like he had much of an option against somebody like Khabib. I mean, it was not a great position to be in when he's got Khabib with his arm around him. And what is McGregor going to do next? Those 2 points finally. That is the big question. And one of the things that's funny about this fight is that when someone loses in a big title fight, you are very rarely so interested in what is next for that person. But because McGregor is the star that he is, people are endlessly fascinated about where he goes from here, because some of those plans that he laid out before the fight, going up to welterweight and fighting Tyron Woodley, now that is off the table. There are other options, of course. He could kind of stay in the lightweight division and fight another contender, but he seems like almost too big of a star to do that. He had kind of broached the topic about going up and fighting Anderson Silva, who is one of the greatest of all time, who's now in his 40s. It would be a much bigger man, and it would be a huge reach and size advantage for Silva, but he did mentioned that going into this fight, so that is a possibility. He could also do fights at 170. He could also possibly, as he said before the fight, spearhead a 165-pound division, which the UFC has been kind of reluctant to do. So there are still many options on the table for him. He's still the biggest star in the sport. He's still going to draw a massive amount of money when he does fight. It's just a question of getting that right next opportunity. And you want to put him, if you're the UFC, you want to put him on a path to get that rematch. And the rematch very well could be next. I mean, I would not completely rule that out. Look, if there's any indication, this was a huge financial success for the UFC, and I believe the rematch would do even better. I know people are saying, "Oh, we've already seen it one time." That's BS. When those promos start coming out with that brawl from outside the cage from Saturday night, and you start to hear that those guys talking again, you better believe that everyone is going to be watching if they have a rematch.
It's true. It's not like the Diaz second fight was an anticlimax in any way whatsoever. And on the Diaz as well. And Chris Fields this morning was talking about the Ferguson, McGregor, Khabib triangle, and how actually, it's a weird one in that they can all beat each other in different combinations, and it's not a straightforward pecking order there. And then McGregor tapping out the way he did, I'm sure Khabib will bring that up for the rest of, in the build-up to any rematch. There was nothing else he could do really in that situation, I presume. He was toast.
Yeah, it'll get brought up, and there's some kind of weird stigma when people tap, but it literally happens every single UFC card. It's not really that crazy of an idea that someone taps. He was cranking on his jaw and his neck. If he would, Khabib could have broken his jaw, and that would have kept him out for who knows how long. That's also not an injury you want when you get hit in the face for a living. So I personally, and people who know about the sport don't have any problem with him tapping, but it does become fans for some reason have a stigma against it. But these are fans that have never actually been in a cage fighting another man or woman.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm tapping out too in that situation. I just thought
I'm tapping out before I even get in the cage.
Well, listen, that is true. Hey, Marc Raimondi, MMAfighting.com. Thanks so much, Marc.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.